So again, good afternoon and welcome to those who may be watching today's recording to another National Institute for Congestion Reduction webinar. Today's topic is financial incentives to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Our presenter today will be Carlos Gonzalez. He is a professor of economics at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. Carlos completed his Bachelor's of Arts degree in economics from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, and a master's degree in planning from the also from the University of Puerto Rico in Rio uh, Piedras, and he
Yes.
has a and he has a PhD in design and planning from the University of Colorado at Denver. So with that, uh, Carlos was and I were talking about the weather. It's he's having a little bit of some rain today in Puerto Rico. It is bright and sunny and 74 here in Tampa. So Carlos, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, greetings, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today to share some of our findings from our research. It's been a long time since I did a presentation in English, so sorry because well, my birth fences and all of that. But let's do it. First of all, this research is called financial incentive to reduce vehicle might travel. We were a research team that I was the PI or the primary investigator or primary researcher, but with me, part of the team were the Dr. Alberto Figueroa Medina, Dr. Didier Valdez, Dr. Daniel Rodriguez Roman, and four students, one doctoral student, Juan de Dios Martinez, and three undergraduate students, Jorge Quiles, Enzo Gutierrez, and Ricardo Soto. I really want to appreciate, to give thanks to all of them. All of them were part of the University of Puerto Rico research team. Part of them were from the Department of Civil Engineer. The rest of us were from the Department of Economics. So we're here for anything you need. The agenda for today, we are we're gonna go through the whole research. We're gonna talk about research question and goals, then two definitions that I want to make clear from the beginning. Then we're gonna talk about the different tasks we were involved doing this uh, research. Well, let's begin. First, before I begin to, to mention the research question, this research explored the viability and effectiveness of positive financial incentives with the objective of promoting the use of transit and micromobility alternatives to private alternatives to ameliorate traffic congestion. Way to mitigating traffic congestion is the reduction of vehicle might travel. The reduction of vehicle might travel is linked to public and social goals like better air quality, sustainable and healthy environments, and the reduction of fuel consumption, among other impacts. Uh, the goal is to produce information to study the acceptability, the implantability, and the real impacts of these positive financial incentives that can be used for the design of policies aiming towards the reduction of vehicle miles travel. The research question we want to address in this research was, what is the minimum amount of money or reward a person is willing to accept to make one trip in transit or micromobility options instead of using the private automobile? That's the core of this research. Okay. Well, um, um, before going to to, to the task, I want to address two definitions because there's two core concepts that we are dealing here, and first one is willingness to accept, and the other one is vehicle might travel. Sorry for the typo, it's not travel, it's travel. The willingness to accept is defined for this research of the minimum amount of money that people demand to accept as compensation because of losses, so that they are indifferent between being paid and bear the losses. And vehicle might travel is referred to the amount of travel for all vehicles in geographic regions over a given period of time, typically a 1 year period. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Okay, here. The tasks, the research tasks, is the methodology we follow in order to achieve the results of this dissertation of this research. And the tasks were 5. First, a literature review, then a traveler willingness to accept survey. Then we move to an experiment with 2 phases, as we're going to explain very soon, and an expert opinion survey. The methodology consisted of all of these parts in order to the literature review, a survey to estimate the willingness to accept of monetary incentives. In this case, this survey is for oriented for the use of alternative transportation modes. The field experiment is to evaluate the effectiveness of financial incentives for the use of e-scooters on a student community, as we're gonna see. Then interviews, in-depth interviews to the participant to analyze their involvement and decisions on the experiment. And at the end, the expert opinion survey is in order to receive feedbacks from experts from different areas for potential uses of these financial incentives. Good. In terms of literature review, the literature review was on the selection and application of financial positive incentives to modify behavior. It focused on understanding the different types of incentives and the impacts of this incentive on the vehicle by travel. The review explored previous studies and experiments on the relationship between receiving positive financial incentives and the public policies associated with implementing these programs. Some of the general findings in the literature review are that people respond to incentives. Decision makers in our economic system frequently stimulate changes in population behavior through the design and implementation of incentives. Incentives have been implemented in US jurisdictions to reduce congestion and vehicle might travel in the past, but much of the financial incentives available literature is focused on agricultural or in health services issues. The most common methods to estimate the willingness to accept in the literature are contingent valuation and stated preferences. Some of the studies tend to equate the concept of willingness to pay with the concept of willingness to accept, but as we're going to see, the trend of users in the literature and in our results are that willingness to accept is higher than the willingness to accept. So people value gains and losses differently, and that is the reason for that disparity. In economics, there's a theory, the prospect theory, from Daniel Kahneman. He won the award in honor to Alfred Nobel in economics in 2004, I think, for this theory. And one of their conclusion is that people dislike losses more than they like gains. So it goes with the theory. Normally, people will prefer to are going to tend to accept more for a loss than to pay for something that they really like. Well, let's go. The next task was the willingness to accept survey. We designed a survey that includes stated preference questions. Stated preference questions were included along with other open questions to identify travel mode preferences. Socioeconomic and demographic questions were included to analyze the acceptability of incentive based on the sample characteristics. Residents of Puerto Rico were selected as the target populations. The traveler, the convenience sample, we received 406 online responses, but of those, 336 were valid. So we had a 5.2% of errors and an 85% confidence level in our responses. As part of the survey, we address some characteristics of the population. There were gender, age, income, education level, employment level. Most of the people, of course, we obtained 406 responses from 2.69 million inhabitants aged 18 years or older. But, well, in terms of transportation modes, a higher percentage of the participants stated that to use their private automobile as their private mode of transportation. Only 16% of the sample stated to be transit users, and 20.6% stated to use e-scooters. Several critical factors, as we're gonna see, in the decision to use transit are parking conditions, transit level time, and travel security. In the case of e-scooters, the most important factors the most important factors in the case of e-scooters are the weather conditions, the riding safety, and the service fare. The Tren Urbano Heavy Rail Service, which is the transit system in San Juan metropolitan area, had the lowest incentive value, 17.10, as an alternative to the automobile, as we're gonna see. Let's move to the next slide. The contingent valuation results are as follows. The bus received 18.3, Tren Urbano 17.10, and e-scooter 18.9. So the Tren Urbano, as I was saying, has the lowest mean incentive value, 17.10 per trip, as an alternative to the automobile, whereas e-scooters obtain the highest mean incentive of $18.90 per trip. Okay? Older participants show a willingness to accept lower to either use one of the three modes instead of the automobile. The middle-aged group required a higher incentive for the use of buses, higher than for the use of e-scooters, which might suggest that bus travel time efficiency concerns are more significantly in this group than in the e-scooter safety risk. Let's go to the next one. The stated preference scenarios we designed for our closed questions are related to the use, to the alternatives between heavy rail versus automobile, bus versus automobile, and e-scooter versus automobile, and the incentives to replace where as we see in the image in the right side, the conditions were $1, $3.50 or $7 per trip, and the travel time difference for the closed questions for the stated preference were saying 5 more minutes and 5 less minutes. If there's savings in time also. Uh, the stated preference results are as appear in the monitor. The participants in the lower income group tend to request higher monetary incentive to select an alternative mode for their commute trips. The tren urbano mode, in particular, was the option most preferred by the participants to be selected over their private automobile in exchange for a monetary incentive. Most of the people prefer transit over e-scooters and bus, at least in this survey. In the case of buses and e-scooters, people most probably would not change their usual decision on their selection of their transportation mode, no matter the amount of incentive offered. That's one of uh, the difference in the willingness to accept values between the three alternate modes, municipal buses, tren urbano, and e-scooter, was found to be statistically significant. An important tendency was that the incentive value requested for each of the three alternative modes decreases as the age and the income of the person increase. The stated preference scenarios suggest that the stated preference scenarios suggest that as the monetary incentive offered for the using of the tren urbano heavy rail increase, it increased the probability of choosing it over the automobile option. On the other hand, the model suggests that as the travel time for a trip in any of the three alternative modes increase, the probability of the person choosing any of them over the automobile significantly decrease. Okay. Now we move to the field experiment. After we perform our survey to the whole population. The team decided that we need to move to perform an experiment for many reasons in order to see if in reality the incentives were gonna work or not. Let's speak about that specific part of the story. The participants that we recruited for the field experiment were from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. The field experiment was designed as a factorial experiment, as we see on the monitor. Post-experiment interviews were conducted with the participants to explore the reasons for the decisions taken during the experiment and to understand their perceptions and opinions about the long-term use of the e-scooters. Qualitative interviews were performed to gather a deeper understanding of the participants' mindset and impact in their decision to use an alternative travel mode. The interviews were carried out 6 months after the experiment and were conducted through individual online meetings. But first, let's talk about the first part, which is the experiment. The field experiment tests the use of financial incentives on the shared e-scooter service offered in the Municipality of Mayagüez. The procedure evaluated the potential long-term impact to reduce vehicle mile travel on college students by offering two incentives, a $15 incentive per trip and a $30 incentive per trip. 14 subjects participate in the experiment. We expect more, but that's That's that was the number. 14 students participated in the experiment. The participants were called during the morning or the afternoon period on weekdays to inform them of their time to make a trip using the e-scooter service and the amount of the incentive offered. Five students, let me, five students, uh, or 14 of 16 individuals participate in the experiments. Of the 14 participants, 5 students made both trips with the incentives. In other words, they took scooter trips when the incentive was 15 and 30 with both quantities. 2 students took a trip when the incentive was $30, but did not take the trip when the incentive was $15. 4 students took a trip when the incentive was $15, but did not take a trip when the incentive was $30. 10 students were men, while only 4 were women. Of the 5 people who made both trips, 2 of them were women. And of the 6 students who only took one trip, 4 of them took the trip when the monetary incentive was $15, the lowest incentive. This may suggest that the monetary value of the incentive was not the decisive factor in making the trip, but rather other factors. Perhaps the weather, the need to make a trip at the corresponding time, or other factors were more decisive when deciding on making the trip. The for the follow-up interviews, the 14 experiment participants were invited 6 months later to answer an open-ended question qualitative follow-up survey. 11 participants agreed to complete the survey. The purpose of this qualitative follow-up was to understand the mindset of the participants and their reception to the e-scooters, and to verify if there were changes in the pattern of the use of e-scooters after the participant no longer had monetary incentives available. From the follow-up interviews, uh, the factors they identify as risk for the use of the e-scooters were street condition and maintenance, vehicular traffic, and the lack of dedicated infrastructure for e-scooters. In Puerto Rico, it's interesting to say that only 2 participants mentioned weather and rain, thinking about that in the place that that the that the experiment was performed in Mayagüez, our hometown. It's rained almost every day, but well, I think we are used to the rain. So there were other follow-up questions that we did to the students in terms of treat purposes, in terms of if it's reasonable, the cost of the scooter for the students, and we want to hear about their comments on the incentive. Only 1 participant was indifferent about the incentive, and only 1 think that the incentive was not enough or insufficient. For 6 participants, the incentive was enough, and 3 participants stated that they would have taken less incentive. So this is positive in many ways. Other types of incentives that the participants would have accepted instead of cash were food, free trips, gift cards, and guaranteed parking for your car. This is interesting. Puerto Rico is a place extremely car oriented for many reasons that we're not gonna discuss right now. Okay. If there were changes after the follow up, well, they were some changes. The results suggest that the e-scooters have the potential to replace automobile used for the student population, students particular, especially or specifically if proper riding safety measures and long-term cost consideration are taken. The incentive program seems to have been successful in motivating the willingness to accept the error of using or acquiring, in some cases, an e-scooter or on some of the participating students. 8 students out of 14 are willing to use the e-scooter instead of the car 6 months after the experiment. So it's more than half. One is indifferent, and 2 participants out of 14 refuse to change their car for an e-scooter. The next part of the project of the research was the expert opinion survey. We presented the results of both the experiment and the first survey to a series of experts about transportation engineering, planning, sociology, public policy, law, and economics, experts from the private and public sectors. And those experts, we prepare a questionnaire. We develop a questionnaire to obtain the experts' opinions. The questionnaire provide the expert with summarized results from the travelers' willingness to accept survey, the field experiment, and the participant follow-up interviews. Each question included a summary of findings for each of the research tasks completed to give the experts the relevant information for each of the questions. The questionnaire was divided into 5 sections that include 4 sections related to the traveler's willingness to accept survey, 5 questions related to willingness to accept, 4 questions related to the stated preference scenarios, 2 questions related to field experiments, and 4 questions related to the follow-up interviews. A total of 8 experts participate in the expert opinion survey. 8. The experts were considered the potential use of financial incentives to promote the selection of alternative modes to reduce the vehicle mile travel. About the results from the field experiment conducted in Mayagüez, the experts tend to agree that while financial incentives could change the transportation mode selection for a short period, their actual implementation will require sustained improvements in the transit services offered locally and improvements in the road infrastructure. Okay, some of the answers. Let's go of the experts about the effectiveness of offering a positive financial incentive to change transit mode choice. Some of the experts' answers are as in the monitor. It's a strategy that must be considered. It will be beneficial to promote transit. The option can generate alternative for sectors in our society, and other issues. About the effectiveness of an incentive program between $15 and $30. The expert said it may be viable, but as we said before, but in conjunction with other changes needed in the transportation system to achieve those ends. About the effectiveness of the incentive program to generate permanent changes in behavior. Again, the incentive will be accepted, the experts appreciate, by low income and middle income study. And they stated that for a permanent change, again, we must improve the infrastructure that can accommodate the e-scooters and other micromobility alternatives significantly. Because right now it's very difficult to share lanes, bicycles, scooters, buses, and a lot of cars. The experts, as we stated before, gave some recommendations in relation to the oh, to the possible use of these positive financial incentives in order to ameliorate the vehicle might travel. And again, the most important recommendation is that the experts insist that we should increase investment in public transit services with high frequencies on fixed roads, densification of urban spaces, and the creation of separate lanes and sidewalks to avoid conflict with motor vehicles, and tax incentives when purchasing monthly passes. The expert said that it is essential to rescue the sidewalks and limit free parking, which would represent less parking supply, higher cost, and would present public transportation as a viable alternative. The expert also stated that it's necessary to increase and stratify the sample of the study as well as include new variables different of the ones that we use in this study. And the main alternative to mobility from the expert is to promote collective transportation. But in Puerto Rico, this is going to require a huge investment in infrastructure and citizen education. Uh, Other recommendations, well, before we go to that, other recommendations, the study results indicated that financial incentives can help motivate, with some limits, a shift from private vehicles to alternative modes of transportation, such as transit and micromobility. However, the effectiveness of these incentives varies significantly across demographic groups and is influenced by factors such as age, incomes, and there's perceptions about the transit service and quality and the safety of the scooters when sharing the road with other vehicles. The study points out that while younger and lower income population are more responsive to higher financial incentives, older adults are willing to accept lower incentives, which suggests a lower valuation of time of these social groups. In terms of policy and practice recommendations regarding policy implementation, the study highlights the benefit of promoting transit and micromobility, but this must be perceived by the community as safe efficient and reliable services. Puerto Rico, is a persistent lack of confidence in any service that is not the private car. The study recommends that this must be, the study recommends the potentials, the potential implementation of a program of financial incentives as a public policy strategy that must be accompanied by many things, as street infrastructure improvements, like, as we stated before, uh, exclusive lanes or right of way to accommodate e-scooters, wider shared lanes that allow separation from vehicular traffic, and increase restrictions on the use of private cars in urban areas by limiting free on-street parkings. Of course, this after other infrastructure is available. Uh, Furthermore, additional research could focus on increasing and stratifying the sample by age, gender, students, faculty, and employees of the experimental study of financial incentives, as well as including new variables and alternative modes. The survey results suggest the population has a low opinion of the capacity of transit to efficiently compete with a similar trip in an automobile. Once the efficiency of transit services and the road of micromobility are improved, and the on-road, safety on micromobility are improved, and the alternatives are available for the population, then a citizen education campaign should be implemented. In terms of the experiment, we would prefer to include other means as buses. Well, we were limited because of we had some limitations related to some administrative ways of the university, and we could not include our free bus system in the study, but that's a story for another day. If there's no other thing, here is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, any questions, well, I'd be more than happy to address them. Thank you for your time. And yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, Carlos. Thank you so much for all of the great information. We did. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry for my problems with the English.
No, you did a great job. No, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did get a number of questions during the registration process that I think it's important to cover during this Q&A portion. So we'll start with those while we wait for some other questions to be posted in either the Q&A and or in the chat window. The first question says, did you find any major setbacks during the registration or during the research process?
Well, thank you for the question. The main setback is the one that I mentioned at the end of my presentation. It was that we at the beginning we want to include bus and other alternative than scooters to the experiment, but internal processes in the university didn't allow us to do it. And it's interesting, but because the the institution didn't allow us to include buses because the buses were free. And there was no proof of the students of the trip, and because of that, the student would not have evidence of the trip, and then the university don't have a way to make the payment to the students. So yeah, that was the there were more as administrative obstacles than research obstacles. But yeah, there were plenty of obstacles.
Yeah, that makes sense because there was another question that posed, and since buses or public transportation wasn't included, there was another question that sort of said, how can we attract car owners to use public transportation for short trips?
Uh, how can you repeat the question?
Yeah,
Yes.
how can we attract car owners
Mhm.
to use public transportation for short trips?
Well, again, incentives. The study demonstrated that incentives can be used, but it depends on the population. Uh, we could move into we at least in the case of Puerto Rico, people could move to use other alternatives, but again, the main problem is the perception. Well, not necessarily the perception and the situation of the infrastructure. If the infrastructure is not in good condition, or if people think that the bus is not going to be there on time, and all of these issues, that is going to be a problem. And this is a problem, well, normal, typical in Puerto Rico. As an example, we our when I said our, I refer to the in our municipality in Mayagüez, we have this free transit bus system. uh, but some people, it's going better every day, it's improving, but some people are still don't want to use it being free, because they have the perception that they are not gonna be on time to their meetings. They in the precisely in short short trips, and if this persists, that's gonna be a problem. But, well, I don't know if that is enough, but there could
Yeah,
be many ways. Yes.
yeah, that makes sense. Why did you use the terms willingness to accept instead of willingness to pay?
Well, I use willingness to accept instead of willingness to pay because, well, first, in the literature, most of the studies a lot of studies related to willingness to accept equals willingness to accept to willingness to pay. And there's more methods and more studies related to willingness to pay than to willingness to accept. But uh, uh, we decided, the team decided that we were moved to willingness to accept instead of willingness to pay as a different concept, not measured the same way, because first, it's not exactly the same, and second, uh, the literature review showed us or brought to us that most of the people are not willing to pay the same amount as they are willing to accept for similar sacrifices. So normally the willingness to accept is going to be higher than the willingness to pay. And if we want to really address the willingness to accept, that it will be higher, but then we move in that direction. But that goes hand in hand with the with the findings of Daniel Kahneman that I mentioned before, from the perspective of behavioral economics, that he stated that people feel losses stronger that, well, he stated that people feel 2.5 stronger the losses than the way that you feel the good things. For example, an A in a course, you are gonna be happy, but an F in a course, you're gonna be double the angry than for an A, kind
Yeah.
of. So that's what is important to move to the concept of willingness to accept, because it's a sacrifice, and people, if they think they're gonna do a sacrifice, there's gonna be a tendency to ask for more, I think.
Thank you. It looks like we've got one more question. It says the experts consulted were from academia. Um, did they have experience in either the public or private sector?
Well, they were 8 experts. Uh, they were from many branches, as we stated before. They were from engineering, economics, sociology, urbanism, public policy. But yeah, well, most of them are part of the academy, are part of the university, but they they were also at some point in their careers uh, consultants. They were, well, secretary of transportation, and they had different positions both in the private and public sector. So yeah, there is their knowledge is not only from, well, from the school, is also from the practice. So that's we want, that's what we shows them, because they have the preparation, but they also have a lot of practice to share with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank
As
you.
you might have noticed, I have been putting the session evaluation on the screen. You can either click on the link and or scan the QR code with your cell phone. Obviously, we value your feedback, and we want to make sure that these webinars are meaningful and impactful for you and in your current role. So thank you so much for taking the opportunity to fill out that survey and provide your feedback. Thank you so much to Carlos for doing today's webinar. He did a fantastic job. And so thank you. So on behalf of the National Institute for the Congestion Reduction, please stay connected to our website, as we have a full and complete session schedule of sessions coming up now through mid to late May. So again, on behalf of NYSER, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.